Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Laura Sinnott, music audiologist. I'm going to give you a very top-level description of earplugs out there that are appropriate for professional musicians and specifically for orchestral musicians. Now, I would never ever tell a musician that there's an earplug out there that will sound like there's nothing in your ears. That's just not true. Every time we wear hearing protection, it is a compromise to the sound quality. However, we have to weigh those risks, the risks of, well, do I accept that compromise in order to prevent hearing loss, tinnitus, and other disorders that can happen? We're going to start with the one that is the highest fidelity, meaning the best sound quality. That one is called the 3DME. It's a hearing protection system that has microphones on the outside of the earphone, and then you wear a wire and a cable that connects to a belt pack. The microphones on the outside are able to capture sound up until about 130 dB without distorting. You use an app or a couple onboard buttons to lower the sound. You can adjust the earphones so that the sound is reduced even by only 2 dB in each ear. And you can also adjust different frequency bands. So it would be like adjusting an equalizer on your stereo. You can reduce, let's say, just the mid frequencies or the treble or the bass. So if you, let's say, have a piccolo player to your right, you may want to reduce the mids and high frequencies by a lot, but then maybe on your left, you don't have as much loud sound and you might not want to reduce the sound at all. And then there's also a limiter. You would use it if you want to hear the sound really naturally up until it gets to a certain point. So maybe you're comfortable with sound until it reaches 96 dB. Then you'd engage your limiter at 96 and the sound will never get louder in your ear canals than 96. These can be purchased with custom silicone ear tips, which I would highly recommend for any woodwind or brass player, because with the custom ear tip, you will be able to get it really deep in your ear canal, and that will help make your instrument sound more natural. You can also get the 3DME Tour, which the whole earphone is customized to your ear canal. That's going to be the most expensive option, but the most comfortable, the least bulky. Now, the trade-off with the 3DME is simply that you need to wear earphones and then a body pack. For some people, this really turns them off. You just don't, a lot of people don't want to have to deal with putting an earphone in their ear. But for a lot of other people, once they put the system on and they secure the cable behind their neck, they clip the belt pack to their waist, or even like a belt if you're wearing a dress, it's something that people get used to pretty quickly. But that is the trade-off. Next are the electronic earplugs made by a company named Etymotic. There are two versions. One is battery powered and the other one is rechargeable. They're very similar, but the rechargeable one basically reduces a little bit more sound compared to the battery operated one. Basically, the difference with electronic versus non-electronic is you're going to be able to maintain more of those high frequencies. A traditional earplug, even the best quality earplug out there, dampens or reduces the high frequencies a lot more than an electronic earplug. And when those high frequencies are dampened, the sound just isn't as natural. It's not as crisp. It's not as clean compared to the sound you'll get from an electronic earplug. So again, the etymotic earplugs, the benefit is that they're very tiny and they're kind of like set it and forget it. You only have two options. One setting reduces about 9 decibels of sound and the other one reduces about 15. And typically, you're not going to need more reduction than that playing in an orchestra. Now, one of the kind of weird things about it is that it uses what's called compression, and without getting too technical, compression means your dynamic range is going to be a little bit, shall we say, messed with. Now, a lot of people don't mind this at all because the compression doesn't really kick into gear until the sound is quite loud. And at that point, you really just want your ears to be protected from that loud sound. Some people can perceive a little hissing sound, which is called a noise floor. Now, again, usually when you're using this in the orchestra, the sound around you is loud enough that you don't notice the hissing. Finally, the only other drawback with the Music Pros are that When the sound gets really loud, some people describe that they can hear distortion. And it's true, the microphones on the outside will start to distort, meaning they can't handle sound that's louder than about 105 decibels. So if you're getting like really, really loud, like a triple forte passage, or if let's say like it's a vibraphone just being hit really, really hard, it might be kind of distracting to hear that distortion. But again, some people don't perceive the distortion, or they don't notice it, or they don't mind it. Again, everything's kind of a trade-off, and every individual is a little bit different in terms of what distracts them or what doesn't. All right, the next type of earplug that would be a good option for an orchestral musician is the passive earplug or non-electronic custom soft silicone earplug with special filters inside. This earplug will be custom made to your ear canal, so an ear impression by an audiologist is required. What makes this sound good is not only the way that the earplug is constructed. There's something called a sound bore, or like the hole in the earplug. And when you order this from the right manufacturer, they do tests on the sound bore to make sure the earplug sound quality is as natural as possible. Also, it's the filter that's used. And the filter in this earplug is also made by that company Etymotic, and it is known to be the most natural sounding filter out there. The filters come in 3 different strengths. One reduces sound by 25 dB, the other by 15, and then the third by 9. In general, the 25 going to sound a little bit more similar to a foam earplug that's actually inserted deeply or properly. The 15 dB is a pretty natural sounding filter, and you're going to notice a difference, but it won't be as much as the 25, of course. And then the 9 decibel filter is actually a really good option if you either are really hesitant or resistant to wearing any kind of earplug. It's going to reduce the sound by enough to make a difference in protecting your hearing or not. I describe it as taking the edge off. So if you're kind of unsure whether to go with a 9 or a 15, well, you could actually get both. The filters are interchangeable, but I'll typically tell people if you think you're going to wear the earplug for a while at a time, like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time, and again, you've never worn earplugs before, or you're hesitant, or you don't like them, get the 9 because it's going to make a difference, but it's not as much of a compromise. However, if you think you're only going to put the plugs in when it gets really, really loud, then you're going to want to go with the 15 or maybe even the 25. I have some people who tell me, when it's a really intense passage and they're sitting near percussion, the 9s don't feel like they're protective enough. And that makes sense because sound at that point is going to be well over 100 decibels. But then also I have some musicians who tell me it's hard for them to even wear the 9. So again, it's kind of tough because everybody's different. Everybody's kind of the way that everybody perceives the sound is different, and everybody's concern and willingness to use the earplugs and accept the compromise, knowing that they're protecting their hearing, everybody's kind of threshold for that is very different. And finally, some questions that I get asked pretty regularly. One is, what about consumer devices like the Apple AirPods Pro? Are they dangerous? Are they good? The Apple AirPods Pro, specifically the AirPods Pro, they do have a hearing protection feature built in. It's called adaptive transparency mode. However, I've done a bunch of tests on it, and it doesn't really do that much. The actual hearing protection part really only engages with particular types of sounds. However, I am pretty confident, knowing what I know and hearing what I've heard, that in maybe the next 1 or 2 years, soon the AirPods Pro will be a legitimate electronic or active earplug. We're not quite there yet. And then another question is, oh, well, I use Foamies. I kind of just put them between the pegs of my violin or things like that, and I only put them in, I kind of half pull them out, half put them in when it gets really loud. Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, any earplug is better than no earplug when we're talking about protecting your hearing. So I would never frown upon, using a foam earplug here or there, or even a good over-the-counter earplug. Typically, though, if you are using foam or an over-the-counter earplug, whether that be loop or etymotic, ER20s, eargasms, vibes, whatever you're using, if it's actually inserted properly, you're probably over-protecting. You don't need as much as those earplugs tend to give you, meaning as much attenuation.